Hello everyone and welcome back to Rewilding the Future. Today we're going on a journey into a part of the world that once echoed with roars and has been silent for far too long. From the forests and valleys of the Caucasus to the endless steppes and deserts of Central Asia, this entire region was once home to the Asiatic lion, a powerful apex predator that shaped landscapes, cultures, and entire ecosystems for tens of thousands of years, until humans wiped it out. In this video, we'll explore what happens if the lions come back. We'll look at where Asiatic lions once lived and where they could live again, hunting red deer and roe deer in mountain forests, following herds of wild horses and saiga on the steppe, sharing the land with bison, camels, wolves, leopards, bears, and maybe even future rewilded cheetahs, tigers, elephants, and rhinos. We'll see how a single predator can change everything, from the behavior of gazelles to the recovery of forests to the survival of rare species across the region. This is not just a theoretical story about lions. It's a question about us. Will we let the Caucasus and Central Asia stay quiet, or are we ready to restore the roar? Before we talk about bringing lions back, we need to remember what kind of lions we're talking about. These are not zoo lions dropped into a random landscape. These are Asiatic lions, Panthera leo, part of the old northern lion lineage that once stretched from North Africa across the Middle East to India and Central Asia. They were built for extremes: hot summers, cold winters, snow in the mountains, dry winds on the steppe. Males often had shorter, darker manes than many African lions. Their bodies were compact and athletic, moving easily between forest, scrub, grassland, and river valleys. This was not a savanna-only lion. This was a lion of rivers, mountains, and deserts. For most of the last 10,000 years, the belt from Balkans and Turkey through the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, Iran, and Central Asia was lion country. When people here looked at the landscape, they didn't just see deer, boar, and gazelles. Somewhere, usually invisible but always present, there were lions. If you stand today in a valley in Armenia or southern Georgia, looking at snowy peaks and vineyards and small villages, it's hard to imagine lions walking here. But for thousands of years, they did. They followed the Kura and Araxes rivers, used the floodplains as travel corridors, and hunted red deer, roe deer, wild boar, and wild cattle in the surrounding forests and open grasslands. Classical writers from Greece and Rome talk about lions in Armenia and near the Black Sea. Later, Armenian and Persian sources mention lion hunts in the region. These lions weren't visitors. They were part of the ecosystem. As people cut more forests, plowed more land, and hunted the same prey, the lions started to retreat. By the Middle Ages, they were already restricted to more remote areas in the south and southeast of the region. Most historians think they survived here until around the 10th to 12th centuries, maybe a little longer in some pockets. Then they were gone. The Caucasus kept its wolves, its bears, its lynx and leopards, but the lion disappeared from the mountains and valleys that had carried its roar for millennia. To the west, in Anatolia, the story was similar. Lions once roamed from the Aegean coast all the way across to the eastern mountains. They haunted oak forests, rocky hills, river valleys, and the dry interior steppe. They appear again and again in Hittite, Assyrian, and later Persian art from this region. But as cities grew and agriculture expanded across the fertile plains, the habitat available to lions shrank. Western and Central Anatolia gradually lost their lions. By the time firearms were common, most of the remaining animals were crowded into the rugged southeast, along the upper Tigris and Euphrates and the surrounding hills. With rifles, the last lions didn't stand a chance. Individuals that took livestock or were simply seen near villages were shot. By the late 1800s, Anatolia's lions had vanished. A few reports from the very early 1900s hint at solitary survivors, but the population was effectively extinct. Iran held on much longer. For thousands of years, lions lived in the plains and foothills of western and southern Iran, places like Khuzestan, Fars, and the lower slopes of the Zagros Mountains. They hunted Persian gazelles on the plains, wild boar in riparian forests, onagers in semi-desert, and deer and wild sheep in the hills. They were central to Persian culture, appearing in poetry, royal symbols, and stories, because they were present in the landscape, not just in imagination. The turning point came in the 19th century. Firearms spread widely. New irrigation projects and agriculture ate into remaining wild habitat. Hunting for meat, hides, and sport intensified. Gazelles and onagers, the classic lion prey, were shot in huge numbers. As wild prey collapsed, lions increasingly took livestock, and conflict with herders escalated. By around 1900, lions in Iran were confined mostly to the southwest. The last confirmed individual was shot near Dezful in 1942. After that, the roar that had echoed across Iranian landscapes for thousands of years fell silent. In Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, the lion was more than a predator. It was a symbol of the entire civilization. On the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, lions stride in glazed tile along processional ways. Assyrian kings carved scenes of lion hunts into palace walls, showing themselves spearing and shooting lions in royal spectacles. Those lions came from the marshes, reed beds, and riverine grasslands of the Tigris and Euphrates. They hunted wild boar and gazelles in the wetlands, used levees and riverbanks as travel routes, and probably moved into semi-desert in cooler seasons. Lions survived here much later than many people think. Ottoman and early British records describe them along parts of the two rivers in the 1800s and early 1900s. The last confirmed lion in Iraq was killed near Mosul in 1918. After that, there were only rumors, footprints in people's memories. Further north, in Central Asia, lions occupied a very different world again. Along the Amu Darya River and around what was once the Aral Sea, they lived in Tugai forests, dense riverine woodlands and reed beds, and in the surrounding semi-desert and steppe. They hunted wild boar hidden in the reeds, goitered gazelles and saiga on the open plains, and wild horses and kulan in the drier grasslands. By the 1800s, Russian explorers were already noting how rare lions had become, but they still found them in some stretches of the lower Amu Darya. Then came massive changes. Tugai forests were cleared for firewood and agriculture. New irrigation canals altered river flow and dried out floodplains. Wild ungulate populations were hammered by hunting and habitat loss. The last Central Asian lions were recorded in the 1880s and 1890s. By the time the 20th century began, the northern edge of the lion's world had collapsed. Across this entire region, the drivers were the same. Lions were hunted heavily, first as symbols of bravery and royal power, and later with rifles as problem animals or trophies. Their habitats were broken apart by farms, cities, dams, and roads. Their wild prey was overhunted or displaced by livestock. And every time a small, isolated lion group started taking goats or cattle, it was wiped out. By the middle of the 20th century, the map of Asiatic lions from the Mediterranean to Central Asia was almost empty. The Caucasus had lost its lions centuries earlier. Anatolia's lions were gone by the late 1800s. Central Asia's last lions died out around the end of the 19th century. Iraq's final lion was killed in 1918. Iran's last confirmed lion fell in 1942. What remained of this entire northern lion world had been compressed into one small pocket of dry forest and scrubland in western India, in and around the Gir forest. A tiny population that somehow survived long enough for conservation to kick in. But here's the thing. While the lions vanished, the landscapes didn't disappear. There are still red deer and roe deer in the Caucasus. European bison have been reintroduced to some valleys, Bezoar ibex still climb the cliffs. In Central Asia, goitered gazelles still sprint across the steppe. Saiga antelope, once at the edge of extinction, are recovering in the grasslands. Wild horses and kulan are being brought back to some regions. Wild boar are everywhere. Wolves, lynx, Persian leopards, bears, foxes, and jackals still patrol these ecosystems. In some places, Amur tigers are being prepared for reintroduction to fill the lost niche of the Caspian tiger. Protected areas are expanding. Rewilding projects are beginning. In other words, the stage is not empty. The cast is still there. The one missing actor is the lion. If we put Asiatic lions back into this system, they wouldn't be entering a dead land. They'd be stepping back into an ecosystem that still remembers how to function with big predators, even if it hasn't heard a roar for a very long time. So now the real question becomes, where exactly could they come back? Which valleys, which plains, which deserts in the Caucasus and Central Asia have enough space, enough prey, and enough wildness to support lions again? How would they fit into a modern world of red deer and roe deer, wild boar and saiga, wild horses, bison, camels and yaks, and a full guild of predators from foxes and jackals to leopards, wolves and bears? To answer that, we have to look at the landscapes one by one, and we have to understand how a returning lion pride would change the behavior of every animal around it, from the largest bison to the shyest gazelle. So now the real question becomes, where exactly could they come back? Which valleys, which plains, which deserts in the Caucasus and Central Asia have enough space, enough prey, and enough wildness to support lions again? How would they fit into a modern world of red deer and roe deer, wild boar and saiga, wild horses, bison and camels, and a full guild of predators from foxes and jackals to leopards, wolves and bears? To even think about that, we need to look at two things. What's happening with lions today, and what's happening with rewilding in this region? Right now, every wild Asiatic lion on Earth lives in one region of Western India, mostly in and around the Gir landscape in Gujarat, where the population has climbed to nearly 900 lions after a century of intensive protection and conflict management. All your genetic eggs are in one basket. One disease outbreak, one severe drought, one major fire, or a political shift, and the entire subspecies could be in trouble. Conservation biologists have been saying for years that Asiatic lions need at least one more free-ranging population in a completely different region, far from Gir, to be safe over the long term. So when we talk about rewilding Asiatic lions into the Caucasus and Central Asia, we're not just talking about, it would be cool to see lions there again. We're talking about insurance for the species, and about finishing a conservation story that is only half done. The first thing that makes rewilding realistic is that the prey is coming back. In parts of the Caucasus, red deer are being reintroduced and populations are growing. Roe deer are still there. Bezoar ibex still pick their way along cliffs. European bison have been brought back to some valleys as a mega herbivore and forest architect. Wild boar are not just present. In many places, they're overabundant and cause serious conflict with farmers. That combination, deer, boar, ibex, bison, is exactly the sort of prey base lions evolved with. In Central Asia, it's the same pattern, but in a different style. Saiga antelope have rebounded from the edge of extinction into the hundreds of thousands and even millions in some years. Goitered gazelles still race across the steppe. Kulan and wild horses are being reintroduced to steppe and semi-desert landscapes. There are wild boar and tugai forests along desert rivers, and wild sheep and ibex in the surrounding mountains. These are not empty lands. These are half-complete ecosystems waiting for an apex predator to plug the last hole in the web. The second thing that makes rewilding realistic is that the region is already doing big, ambitious projects. Kazakhstan and WWF have started reintroducing Amur tigers to the Ili-Balkhash region, using them as ecological stand-ins for the extinct Caspian tiger that used to live there. 2 tigers from a Dutch sanctuary have already arrived in the Ili-Balkhash Reserve, and more are planned as habitat restoration continues. This tells us something important. Countries in Central Asia are willing to think on a large scale again. They're ready to bring back top predators, restore wetlands, rebuild prey populations, and reshape whole landscapes, not just protect a few fragments. If we can imagine tigers back in reed forests around Lake Balkhash, it's not a huge leap to imagine lions back in steppe reserves, semi-desert valleys, and rewilded mountain foothills. So what would rewilding Asiatic lions into the Caucasus and Central Asia actually look like? It wouldn't start with dropping lions randomly into the wild and hoping for the best. It would be careful, stepwise, and built on years of preparation. You'd begin by identifying core areas, large reserves or connected landscapes with plenty of wild prey and low human density, places where red deer, roe deer, ibex, boar, and possibly bison are already established in the Caucasus, and in Central Asia, places with saiga, gazelles, kulan, wild horses, and boar in and around protected areas. Then you'd look at connectivity, where rivers, ridges, and valleys could act as natural corridors, and where roads or settlements need mitigation, wildlife crossings, fencing in key spots, compensation schemes for livestock, and strong community partnerships. Only after that habitat work is done would translocation even be on the table. Moving a small number of lions from India or from a future managed population into spacious, fenced acclimatization zones, letting them adapt, learn the landscape and hunting patterns, and then gradually giving them more freedom. This is not fantasy. We already do this with wolves, bison, lynx, and tigers. The tools exist. The question is, do we have the will? Now, why do we actually need lions back, beyond just, it would be nice? Ecologically, lions are the missing regulator. Without them, wild boar populations explode, raiding crops, damaging forests, and spreading disease. Deer may become overabundant in some places, stripping saplings and slowing forest regeneration. Wolves and jackals can become hyper-dominant mesopredators, pushing down smaller carnivores and hitting some prey species harder than a balanced system would. Lions change that. They specialize in large, powerful prey like boar and adult deer that many other predators avoid. They push herbivores to stay alert, to move more often, to avoid grazing one place to destruction. They suppress mid-level predators simply by being bigger, stronger, and more feared. This top-down pressure creates what ecologists call trophic cascades. Plants recover, forests regenerate, riverbanks stabilize, and biodiversity increases all the way down to insects and songbirds. Bringing lions back isn't just about adding another species. It's about reactivating an entire ecological process that has been missing for centuries. But there's another layer: why humans need them back. For thousands of years, lions were woven into the identities of the cultures across this region. They appear on ancient gates, royal seals, coins, flags, myths, and religious stories from the Eastern Mediterranean to Iran and Central Asia. We've kept the symbol, but killed the animal. Rewilding lions would reconnect people with a piece of their own history that has only survived in books and stones. It would create new opportunities for nature-based tourism in rural areas that are losing population and income. It would bring jobs in ranger work, guiding, science, restoration, and education. Most importantly, it would send a message to the world, but also to ourselves, that extinction does not always have to be the end of the story. That we are capable not only of destroying, but also of repairing. When a child in Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Iran, or Kazakhstan grows up knowing that lions are not just in Africa or on a logo, but actually walking, hunting, and roaring somewhere in their own region again, that changes how they see nature and how they see their place in it. So when we ask, should we bring Asiatic lions back to the Caucasus and Central Asia? What we're really asking is much bigger. Do we want these landscapes to stay half-finished, with the top layer of the food web permanently removed? Or are we ready to rebuild the full system? Prey, predators, scavengers, forests, grasslands, rivers, and people, all interacting again? What happens to red deer and roe deer when they hear roaring in the valleys again? What happens to saiga herds when they have to watch the wind and the grass for more than just wolves? What happens to boar, to jackals, to forests, to birds, when a lion pride takes its place at the center of the web? To understand that, we have to look at the details. How lions would interact with deer, boar, horses, bison, saiga, and wild cattle. How they would fit into a world with foxes, wolves, lynx, leopards, bears, and maybe even future tigers, cheetahs, and hyenas. And how all of that adds up to a wilder, more resilient Caucasus and Central Asia. So if we really want to understand how this could work, we have to stop thinking in abstract and start thinking in places. Real valleys, real plains, real deserts. Not somewhere in the Caucasus or somewhere in Central Asia, but specific landscapes with real animals already living there. If you look at the South Caucasus, Armenia, southern Georgia, western Azerbaijan, you can already see the skeleton of a lion landscape. You've got mountain forests and river valleys with red deer and roe deer. You've got rocky slopes with bezoar ibex. In some areas, European bison have been reintroduced. Wild boar are common, sometimes too common. There are existing protected areas, national parks, reserves, and cross-border conservation projects along the Lesser Caucasus and the Kura-Araxes Basin. From a lion's point of view, that's almost a shopping list. Multiple deer species, wild boar, ibex, and other mountain ungulates, patches of open grassland for hunting, forest and scrub for shade and cover. The climate here, hot summers, snowy winters, mixed forest and steppe, is almost exactly what the Asiatic lion evolved in. This isn't forcing lions into an alien environment. This is taking them back into the kind of mixed landscape their ancestors used for thousands of years. What makes the Southern Caucasus especially suitable is the mosaic. You can have lions hunting in lower valleys and foothills, while lynx, wolves, and leopards dominate higher and steeper terrain. You can design core lion areas where human density is low and wild prey is strong. For example, larger connected blocks of protected land in Armenia and Georgia, and then build corridors along river systems that lions can eventually use to move. Culturally, lions are not strangers here either. Armenian, Georgian, and Persian historical sources all remember lions in this region. Putting them back would not be an introduction of something new, it would be the return of a native. The Caucasus doesn't exist in isolation. To the south and east, the landscapes stretch into northern Iran and then out into the plains and deserts of Central Asia. For lions, that's not just geography, that's a potential movement corridor. Northern and western Iran were historically some of the last strongholds of Asiatic lions outside India. Their old haunts, plains and low hills with gazelles, boar, and wild sheep, are exactly the kind of habitat that still exists in parts of Iran today. In a long-term vision, restoring lions to northern Iran would create a bridge, a lion belt running from the South Caucasus through Iran and out towards Central Asia. Even if politically and practically that's far in the future, it matters for one simple reason. It shows that these regions once formed a continuous lion world. The Caucasus is not a random island, it's the western edge of a much larger system. Now we slide east, across the Caspian, into Central Asia. Here the landscapes look completely different to the Caucasus, but they're just as suitable for lions, because they're the landscapes lions actually lived in until about 130 years ago. Along rivers like the Amu Darya, you find tugai forests, dense ribbons of trees, shrubs, and reeds running through otherwise arid terrain. These are cool, shaded corridors full of wild boar, deer, wild pigs, and smaller mammals. Historically, they were prime lion habitat, cover for ambush, water year-round, and a permanent supply of prey. Pull back from the rivers, and you get semi-desert and steppe grassland, wide open spaces where saiga antelope, goitered gazelles, kulan, and wild horses still roam or are being reintroduced. These open systems are perfect for lions to follow herds, especially in winter and cooler seasons, the same way they once followed saiga and wild horses around the Aral region. In parts of Turkmenistan, you still have relatively intact tugai forests and semi-desert with gazelles and wild asses. In Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, you have huge steppe reserves, saiga calving grounds, and rewilding projects with wild horses and kulan. The human population density in many of these areas is low. There are already large protected areas on the ground. From an ecological point of view, this is classic lion territory. Open land where they can see and stalk large herds. River corridors where they can rest, breed, and ambush boar and deer. Natural prey populations that evolved alongside big predators. And unlike in a crowded, heavily fragmented European landscape, Central Asia still has scale. You can imagine lion home ranges of hundreds of square kilometers without immediately bumping into a city every 10 kilometers. What makes the southern Caucasus and Central Asia especially suitable for rewilding Asiatic lions is a combination of four things. The right prey. The animals lions are built to hunt. Red deer, roe deer, ibex, wild boar, gazelles, saiga, wild horses, kulan, even bison in the Caucasus, either already exist or are being actively restored. We're not trying to feed lions on the wrong species. We're reconnecting lions with the prey they evolved with. The right climate and habitat. These are not deep rainforests or wet tropical swamps. They're dry forests, mixed woodland and grassland, steppe, semi-desert, and river fringes, exactly the environments where Asiatic lions historically lived. The match between the lion's natural adaptations and the physical landscape is very close: space and connectivity. Both regions still have large, relatively wild areas. In the Caucasus, you can connect mountain foothill reserves and valleys. In Central Asia, you have steppe and semi-desert blocks, big enough for lions to roam without constantly being in someone's backyard. You can actually plan connected lion landscapes, not just tiny islands. Existing rewilding momentum. These are places where big conservation projects are already running. Bison in the Caucasus, saiga and wild horses in Kazakhstan, tiger reintroduction plans in Central Asia, forest and steppe restoration projects across the region. That means there's already infrastructure, expertise, and political experience in working with large mammals and complex reintroductions. Put those together, and you don't get a fantasy map. You get a short list of real candidates where a pilot lion population could be tried in the future. A large, well-connected block of foothill and valley habitat in the southern Caucasus, and one or more big steppe-to-guy systems in Central Asia, where saiga, gazelles, wild horses, and boar are abundant. Suitability isn't just about lions and prey, it's also about people. In both the Caucasus and Central Asia, there are rural regions that are losing population, where young people leave, and economies depend on low-margin grazing or crops that are vulnerable to drought and climate change. These are exactly the places where rewilding can become an asset instead of a burden. If you choose areas with low human density, communities already interested in nature tourism, existing protected areas and ranger systems, then lions can become part of a new economic story. Guided wildlife tourism, tracking, photography, local guest houses, research jobs, ranger jobs. The same way wolves, lynx, and bison are already reshaping local economies in parts of Europe, lions could do that in the Caucasus and Central Asia, if we put them in the right places. That's why the question, where is suitable, isn't just ecological. It's social and economic. The best lion landscapes are the ones where nature and people both gain. So when we draw a circle around the southern Caucasus and another around key steppe and river systems in Central Asia, we're not just drawing pretty maps. We're marking out the places where a lost predator could realistically come home, where the land, the climate, the prey, and even the culture still line up in favor of the lion. Those are the places where, if we ever decide to move from theory to action, the first Asiatic lion prides could walk out of a soft-release enclosure, sniff the air, and begin to reclaim an ecosystem that has been waiting for them for far too long. Once we know where lions could return, the next big question is simple and also huge. What happens to all the other animals when the lions come back? Not just to the predators, but to the grazers and browsers, the giants and the tiny things. Deer and boar, saiga and gazelles, wild horses and bison, camels, yaks, elephants, rhinos, even hippos in some future scenario. Because rewilding isn't just add lion and walk away. It's about how one species rewires the whole system. When Asiatic lions step back into the Caucasus, the first animals to feel it will be the deer. Red deer, roe deer, and the critically endangered Persian fallow deer have lived for centuries without a big cat stalking them. In many places, their main worries are hunters, cars, and maybe wolves. Lions change the rules completely. Suddenly, lingering too long in an open meadow at dusk is dangerous. Sleeping in the same safe valley every night is dangerous. The deer have to move more, stay more alert, and spread their grazing pressure across a wider area. That constant, low-level fear sounds harsh, but ecologically it's exactly what forests need. Saplings finally get a chance to grow in places that used to be eaten again and again. Shrubs and young trees around riverbanks recover. Over time, that changes birds, insects, even the way water flows through a valley. For wild boar, the return of lions is more like a long overdue reality check. Right now, in many parts of the Caucasus and Central Asia, boar are the troublemakers, raiding crops, tearing up fields, carrying diseases, and rooting up forest floors so intensely that ground-nesting birds and amphibians suffer. Lions are one of the few predators that can regularly take big, adult boar. A pride that learns the local boar habits can have a real impact on their numbers and behavior. Boar become warier. They avoid open fields near lion paths. They don't root in the same spots night after night. That reduces damage to farmers and lets the forest floor breathe again. Out on the more open landscapes, wild asses and wild horses feel the lion's presence in a different way. Kulan, onagers, and semi-wild or fully wild horses are built for speed and endurance. They evolved with big cats chasing them. First lions, tigers, and cheetahs, later just wolves and humans with rifles. When lions return, herds tighten up. Foals stay closer to their mothers. The groups become more mobile, rotating between grazing sites instead of hammering one patch of grass into dust. Lions don't bring these animals to extinction. They bring back the old conversation between speed and power that shaped them in the first place. In the Caucasus, where European bison have been reintroduced, the interaction is heavier, literally. Adult bison are dangerous, and most lions will learn very quickly to respect them. The main impact is indirect. Lions pick off sick calves or weakened adults, and that pushes the herds to stay fit and alert. Bison, in turn, displace lions around some key grazing areas, just like African buffalo do with African lions. You get a dance of avoidance and occasional confrontation that keeps both species moving, and that movement prevents overgrazing and creates a mosaic of trampled, grazed, and regenerating patches across forests and meadows. In Kazakhstan, if American bison become a permanent part of the steppe rewilding story, their relationship with lions would echo the lost Ice Age partnership between Eurasian steppe bison and big cats. Adult bison will very rarely be taken. Calves and old animals are the ones at risk. But even that small predation pressure is enough to keep herds wary and shifting, especially around river crossings, waterholes, and salt licks. It turns static herds into dynamic ones, and dynamic herds are better for grasslands. Then there's the saiga antelope, one of the strangest and most ancient animals in this whole system. Saiga evolved with lions, wolves, and hyenas, and their bizarre swollen noses are part air filter, part cooling system for long, fast runs across the steppe. With lions in the picture again, saiga herds become a little less predictable. They bunch tighter when moving through lion country, they choose calving grounds with more visibility, and they're forced to stay in good physical condition. Lions will take some saiga, especially the weak, the very young and the old. But they also suppress wolves and feral dogs, which can be much more relentless killers of calves. In a strange way, the presence of lions can actually spread predation pressure more fairly across the herbivore community, instead of letting one predator hammer one prey species. In wetter, more productive areas or future rewilding sites, we can imagine water buffalo, wild cattle, and yaks entering the story. These are the Eurasian equivalents of Africa's buffalo and wild bovines, large, powerful, sometimes aggressive. Lions are cautious around them. Most of the time, they target calves, subadults, or weakened individuals. But even rare attacks are enough to shape behavior. Buffalo herds may avoid certain river crossings at dusk. Yaks might change their seasonal movements to stay away from known lion paths. Wild or semi-wild cattle might graze differently along forest edges. All of that creates shifting zones of safety and zones of risk on the landscape that other species also respond to. Add in gazelles and camels, and you get the desert and semi-desert side of the story. Goitered gazelles are classic cat prey, fast, nervous, always scanning. Lions make them even more selective about where and when they graze, which protects fragile desert vegetation. Bactrian camels, whether wild or feral, are mostly too big for lions to trouble except in rare cases, but they still adjust their movement patterns to avoid lion hotspots. That can help reduce overuse of certain oases or valleys, spreading their impact more evenly. When we start dreaming bigger, we can talk about the real megafauna. Asian elephants, Indian rhinos, and even hippos as future rewilding candidates in certain valleys and wetlands. Adult elephants and rhinos are not regular lion food, they're landscape engineers. Lions might occasionally take a calf, especially if it's sick or separated, but the main interaction is about space and mood. Elephant herds are more defensive in areas where lions are active. They bunch more tightly around calves and may move more often between feeding sites, preventing them from stripping one area too heavily. Rhinos create grazing lawns and wallows that attract deer and boar. Lions quickly learn to check these places for hunting opportunities. If hippos ever return to certain Central Asian or West Asian river systems as ecological replacements for extinct relatives, they would mostly share the water with lions who patrol the banks. Lions wouldn't hunt adult hippos, but might take young ones in rare, risky events, just like in Africa. More importantly, hippo-created channels and pools would become perfect ambush points for lions hunting boar and deer coming to drink. In the cooler, forested parts of the Caucasus, a future rewilding of moose adds another layer. Moose are huge and can be dangerous, so lions would focus on calves and weakened animals. That small predation pressure is enough to stop moose from overbrowsing young trees in river valleys and wetlands. They'd move more, use more of the landscape, and leave behind a more complex forest structure with patches of heavy browsing and patches of regeneration. Exactly what many forest birds and small mammals need. And then there is the hidden world, small mammals and birds. Lions don't usually chase hares, mice, voles, marmots, or ground squirrels, but their presence shapes the fortunes of every one of these species. By controlling boar and deer, lions reduce trampling and rooting in sensitive habitats where small mammals live. By suppressing jackal and stray dog numbers, they ease the constant pressure on nests, burrows, and juveniles. Every lion kill becomes a temporary hotspot. Foxes, mustelids, rodents, and insects all feed on the remains. Vultures and ravens circle overhead, and nutrients are dumped into the soil in one concentrated pulse. For birds, lions are like invisible architects. Ground-nesting birds such as bustards and partridges benefit when boar are fewer and more careful, because fewer nests get dug up. Forest birds gain from regenerating understory where deer can't overbrowse. Raptors and scavengers, eagles, vultures, kites, corvids get a steady supply of carcasses to feed on, especially in winter. Wetland birds profit from the actions of the big herbivores that lions indirectly shape. Elephants smashing channels, rhinos and buffalo opening wallows, hippos carving out deep pools. Each of those features becomes habitat for frogs, fish, insects, and the birds that eat them. So when we talk about rewilding Asiatic lions into the Caucasus and Central Asia, we're not just talking about lions versus deer or lions versus wolves. We're talking about a web of interactions that stretches from bison to beetles, from elephants to eagles, from saiga herds on the steppe to tiny birds nesting in young forest along a mountain stream. One predator returns, and everything else starts to move. When lions come back, they don't just meet herbivores. They walk into a world that already has predators, scavengers, and big omnivores trying to hold their own. And that's where things get really interesting, because rewilding lions isn't just about a new hunter. It's about rebuilding a predator hierarchy that has been missing for centuries. The smallest players in this drama are the foxes, red foxes in forests and farmland, Corsac foxes out on the steppe. For them, lions are like moving storms far overhead. A fox is far too small and too fast to be worth a lion's effort, but lions still change fox lives. In a landscape with lions, medium predators like jackals and stray dogs are less confident, less numerous, and more careful. That opens up space for foxes. They can scavenge at the edges of lion kills when the big cats are gone, feeding on scraps, bone fragments, and the small rodents drawn to carcasses. At the same time, foxes learn to read the landscape, avoiding fresh lion scent, shifting their active hours slightly, and using more tangled cover near burrows. They become classic opportunists living in the shadows of giants, not directly hunted, but constantly shaped by where the giants move. The steppe wolf is one of the main carnivores lions will meet in Central Asia. These are wolves built for dry grasslands and semi-desert, following saiga, gazelles, and livestock across huge distances. Right now, in many steppe systems, wolves don't really have a boss above them. They are the top land predator. When lions arrive, that changes overnight. In Tugai forests and river valleys, lions dominate. A wolf pack that tries to feed on a fresh lion kill risks getting chased off, or even killed. Packs adjust by hunting more in the open steppe at different times and by staying away from known lion core areas. That doesn't wipe wolves out, it pushes them into a more natural niche, focusing on medium prey, hunting where lions are less active, and no longer being able to overexploit saiga or gazelles in key refuges. Out on the wide steppe, far from rivers and permanent water, steppe wolves still rule. They can range into colder, harsher, more marginal habitats that lions rarely touch. The result is a kind of truce written by geography. Lions as rulers of the richer valleys and mixed habitats, steppe wolves as specialists of the emptier, more extreme zones. In the Caucasus and surrounding regions, the Eurasian wolf plays a similar role, but in a different setting. These wolves hunt red deer, roe deer, and boar in forests, foothills, and open slopes, and in the absence of lions, they can become very numerous and very confident. Rewilding lions puts a ceiling back over their heads. Where lion prides establish territories, in lower valleys, mosaic woodland, and open grassland, wolves feel the pressure. They avoid carcasses that smell like lion. They shift more strongly into nocturnal activity. They push their core hunting grounds uphill and into rougher terrain, higher forests, deep snow zones, rocky ridges. That doesn't make wolves the bad guys or push them out completely. Instead, it splits the job of top predator between cats and canids. Lions handle a lot of the big prey in accessible terrain. Wolves become more like mountain specialists and winter hunters, still very important but no longer free to dominate every habitat all at once. For deer and boar, that spread-out predation is actually healthier than relentless pressure from a single species. The Indian wolf is genetically distinct, smaller, and more adapted to open plains than its Eurasian counterparts. Historically and today, Indian wolves coexist with Asiatic lions in the Indian subcontinent. Their interactions were defined by niche. Wolves hunted antelope, deer, boar, hares, and livestock calves. Lions hunted deer, boar, nilgai, buffalo, and wild cattle. In the Caucasus or Central Asia, if Indian wolves were part of a future rewilding program, they would likely fill the ecological niche of mid-sized plains hunters, avoiding lions at all costs. Lions indirectly benefit Indian wolf populations by controlling larger predators like Eurasian wolves or feral dogs that compete more heavily with them. In a multi-predator system, smaller wolf species survive through speed, stealth, and avoidance rather than direct competition. Then there are the golden jackals, the ultimate opportunists. Jackals do very well in human-altered landscapes. In many parts of Eurasia today, they are exploding in number because large predators have been removed and there's plenty of garbage, roadkill, and small prey to exploit. Without a top predator above them, they can start to behave almost like mini wolves, hitting ground-nesting birds, raiding livestock, competing hard with foxes and wildcats. Lions push jackals back into their original role. In a lion landscape, golden jackals shadow the big cats at a distance, waiting for scraps. They shift more towards scavenging and small prey hunting, and less towards acting as mid-sized apex predators. They keep to the margins, reed beds, brushy hillsides, fields near villages, and the night hours when lions are resting. The result is fewer jackals in the core wild areas and less pressure on vulnerable species like groundbirds and small mammals. Jackals don't vanish, they just slot back into the niche evolution wrote for them. Clever, adaptable followers, not rulers. Now imagine adding the dhole, the Asiatic wild dog, back into the picture in the future. Historically, dholes range from Turkey and the Caucasus all the way across Asia. Today they're mostly gone from West and Central Asia, but they could be a powerful rewilding candidate, a pack-hunting canid that targets medium-sized prey and uses dense cover in forests and foothills. In a system with lions, wolves, and leopards, dholes become hyper-specialists. They hunt in groups, relying on teamwork rather than power. Lions and wolves can kill them if they meet in the open, so dholes learn to work in rough ground, steep slopes, and thick scrub where bigger predators are less efficient. They might focus on sections of the prey community that are underused by others: young boar, mid-sized deer, maybe even larger hares and small ungulates in tight terrain. Lions suppress the bully predators, big wolves, jackals, and feral dogs, which can often be a bigger problem for dholes than lions themselves. So while individual encounters are dangerous, the overall predator community becomes more balanced, and there's actually more space for a mid-sized pack hunter to exist without being completely wiped out by canid competitors. And then we have the bears, the heavyweights that aren't quite predators and aren't quite herbivores, but something in between. The Syrian brown bear, once widespread in parts of Turkey, the Levant, the Caucasus, and Iran, is the smallest of these. In a landscape with lions, a Syrian bear knows exactly who the apex predator is. It generally avoids fresh lion kills, visiting carcasses only after the pride has moved on, or at times when lions are least active. Lions may occasionally attack or kill subadult bears if they feel threatened around a carcass. But for the most part, the relationship is more about timing and respect than constant violence. Syrian bears benefit from lions by gaining access to a steady flow of carcasses and by having fewer large canid competitors stealing their food. They, in turn, act as recyclers, dragging bones, scattering pieces, and digging for roots and insects in ways that mix nutrients into the soil. The larger brown bears, Tian Shan bears in Central Asian mountains, East Siberian brown bears further north and east, and the more typical Eurasian brown bear in forests and alpine zones, add more power to that dynamic. In most of the areas where lions would be rewilded, the main overlap will be with Eurasian brown bears in the Caucasus and Tian Shan-type bears in Central Asian highlands and foothills. Adult males of these bears can sometimes face down a small lion group at a carcass, especially if the lions are young or outnumbered. In other situations, lions dominate and bears retreat. What emerges is a negotiated balance. In lowland valleys and open foothills, lion prides usually call the shots. Bears scavenge after them or stick to fruit, roots, and invertebrates. In higher, rougher terrain and in dense mountain forests, bears become the main large omnivores, and lions rarely patrol there except along the easiest routes. In seasons when bears are hyper-hungry, early spring after hibernation, or late autumn before denning, they push harder for access to carcasses. In summer, when berries and insects are abundant, they care less about what the lions are doing. As for the really northern East Siberian brown bears, their main strongholds are far beyond where Asiatic lions would realistically live. If their ranges ever touch, it would be at a fringe, boreal forest edges where lions are already at the limits of their climate tolerance. In those rare overlap zones, the pattern would be similar. Lions dominating open, warmer, prey-rich patches, bears ruling dense forest and colder, rougher ground. All of this, foxes weaving through grass, wolves shifting to the margins, jackals falling back into their scavenger role, dholes carving out a pack hunter niche, bears and lions arguing over carcasses, is what a complete predator community looks like. It's messy. It's dynamic. It's not always comfortable for any one species, but it's stable in a way that single predator systems never are. And that's the heart of rewilding Asiatic lions into the Caucasus and Central Asia. Not creating a lion theme park, but restoring a living, shifting network of relationships where every animal, from fox to bear, has to adapt, specialize, and find its place again under the shadow of the returning king. When lions return, they don't just meet herbivores and wolves. They also step into a world already claimed by other big cats and bone crushers. The quiet small cats, the ambush lynx, the cliff ghost leopard, the high mountain snow leopard, future returning tigers, fast cheetahs, and ancient hyenas. This is where the predator web becomes really deep. The first ones living almost under the lion's paws are the small cats, European wildcats, jungle cats, sand cats, Pallas's cats, caracals. For them, lions are mostly a distant danger, not a daily enemy. Lions don't waste energy chasing a tiny cat that disappears into a rock crack. But lions still change their lives. With lions back, the mid-sized bullies, big wolf packs, jackals, stray dogs, are kept in check. That means less constant harassment for small cats, fewer dens dug up, fewer kills stolen. A Pallas's cat or wildcat can hunt rodents, birds, and small hares on the edges of lion ranges, then slip out of sight long before a pride walks past. They slide into the fine-grained spaces between the footsteps of much larger predators. The Eurasian lynx is the forest ambush specialist of this system. Heavy paws, short tail, ear tufts, and a hunting style built around patience and surprise. In today's Caucasus, lynx are often the top native cat in many forests. With lions back, that changes, but not in a way that erases the lynx. Lions take over the lower valleys, foothills, and open or patchy forests, where red deer, roe deer, and boar are most abundant. Lynx respond by doubling down on what they're best at: denser forest, broken rocky slopes, deeper snow, steeper terrain. They hunt mostly at night and twilight, staying close to cover. A lynx carcass, a roe deer in a thicket, or a chamois cached under branches may sometimes be stolen if a lion stumbles on it, but usually lynx kills are too small and too hidden to attract a whole pride. Instead of direct war, you get vertical separation. Lions own the valley floors and open forest edges. Lynx rule the steep, tangled, snowy belts above them. That layering actually protects lynx from the worst competitors, large wolves and dogs that lions are better at suppressing than a lone cat ever could. Then there's the Persian leopard, the big rival cat that comes closest to overlapping with lions. Persian leopards hunt many of the same animals lions do: roe and red deer, ibex, wild boar. They like broken ground, cliffs, forest edges, and rocky gorges. In the modern Caucasus and northern Iran, they are the flagship big cat, the one species doing the heavy lifting at the top. Put lions back into that system and you don't erase leopards, you push them into their natural strongholds. Leopards become even more tied to vertical cliffs and rock walls, deep gorges and ravines, dense forest pockets, very rough terrain where a pride of lions would struggle to move silently. They hunt more at night, cache kills on ledges, and avoid open approaches to carcasses that smell strongly of lion. When the two species do meet at a kill, lions win and leopards back off or vanish completely. But in return, leopards get something valuable. Lions slam down the numbers of wolves, jackals, and stray dogs that constantly harass and rob leopards today. That gives leopards more opportunities to hunt and raise cubs in peace in those rugged refuges. So the end result is a two-tier big cat system. Persian leopards, the cliff and gorge specialists. Asiatic lions, the terrace, valley, and open woodland specialists. Both are needed to fully cover the landscape. Higher still, above forest and above most human activity, live the snow leopards. Snow leopards are built for altitudes where lions simply don't work well. Steep cliffs, thin air, winter winds, ibex, and wild sheep on knife-edge ridges. In most realistic rewilding scenarios, lions will rarely climb into true snow leopard country, except along a few easy passes in summer. That means direct encounters are rare. Their relationship is more like neighbors on different floors of a building. Down below, lions control deer and boar, shaping the forests, shrublands, and river systems that send water and nutrients upslope. Above the tree line, snow leopards ride on the stability created by those healthier lower ecosystems. If lions help keep prey, populations, and vegetation in balance down low, the risk of erosion, landslides, and habitat collapse up high is reduced, which indirectly supports ibex, argali, and the snow leopards that feed on them. So even without many face-to-face meetings, snow leopards live in a world where the lion's roar in the valley still echoes quietly in the mountains. In Central Asia, the Siberian tiger story is really the story of recreating the extinct Caspian tiger by using its close relative, the Amur tiger. Kazakhstan and WWF have already brought 2 Amur tigers into a large enclosure in the Ili-Balkhash Reserve for breeding, with plans to restore wild tigers to the region. Future releases from Russia are expected starting around 2026. Historically, tigers here lived in reed beds, tugai forests, and floodplains, hunting boar, deer, and occasionally livestock, exactly where lions would also be strongest if they were rewilded. If both species were present, the relationship would be extremely tense. Lion prides would dominate open steppe, dry forest, and more arid plains. Tigers would hold the densest reed beds and forested river corridors. Where they overlap, they would compete for boar and deer and likely kill each other when they meet. These are animals that do not tolerate equals. Each encounter is a high-stakes conflict. In some situations, a pride of lions could kill a tiger. In others, A large male tiger could kill a lone lion. In practice, any real rewilding plan would probably zone the landscape. Tiger restoration in Ili-Balkhash and similar wetlands, lions more in steppe and semi-desert, to avoid constant lethal conflict. But ecologically, having both in the broader region would recreate an apex predator layer similar to ancient West and Central Asia, with lions ruling drier plains and tigers ruling wet forests and reeds. Now imagine the cheetahs. The Asiatic cheetah, hanging on today in tiny numbers in Iran, evolved with both lions and leopards in West and Central Asia. It is a specialist of open semi-desert, steppe, and light grasslands, focusing on medium-sized prey, gazelles, young wild asses, smaller antelopes. If Asiatic cheetahs, or more realistically for some areas, African cheetahs as ecological replacements are restored to parts of Central Asia, their interaction with lions will look a lot like Africa's, a relationship of speed versus power. Cheetahs live by seeing danger early and avoiding it. Lions live by controlling key water points, vantage hills, and ambush zones. Cheetahs lose direct fights. Lions will steal their kills and may kill cubs if they find them. But cheetahs gain something too. Lions suppress wolves, jackals, and dogs that can be even more relentless nest robbers and cub killers. So cheetahs carve out survival by hunting at hotter hours when lions are lazy, using very open flats where ambush is hard, raising cubs in more remote, less lion-favored microhabitats. The result is a system where gazelle and small antelope predation is shared among lions, wolves, and cheetahs, instead of sitting entirely on one predator's shoulders. In the dark, another ancient figure steps forward, the striped hyena. Striped hyenas already live in many of the regions we're talking about, parts of the Caucasus foothills, Iran, the Middle East, and Central Asia. They are mostly solitary nocturnal scavengers, with powerful jaws built for cracking bones. Give them lions again, and you don't create a new relationship. You restore an old one. Striped hyenas wait until lions finish feeding and move off, then move in to clean up. They crunch the bones that even lions leave behind, turning calcium and phosphorus locked in skeletons into nutrients that can cycle back through the soil and plants. They also scavenge dead livestock, wildlife, and roadkill near villages, reducing disease and rot. It's a dangerous life. A striped hyena that shows up too early at a fresh lion kill can be killed, so they learn to read scent, sound, and timing very carefully. For them, lions are both a threat and a food generator, an apex predator that creates the large carcasses no other scavenger could access often enough on its own. Finally, there is the possibility of bringing back the ecological role of the extinct cave hyena of Ice Age Europe and West Asia by rewilding the spotted hyena into suitable areas. Spotted hyenas are not shy bone pickers. They are powerful hunters and social carnivores that directly challenge lions at carcasses. In Pleistocene Europe and West Asia, cave lions and cave hyenas did this dance for tens of thousands of years. If spotted hyenas one day return to parts of Central Asia or even Europe as ecological replacements, their relationship with Asiatic lions will be intense but incredibly productive for the ecosystem. Large hyena clans can sometimes drive small lion groups off kills. Strong prides can kill hyenas and hold carcasses. That back-and-forth rivalry has three big ecological effects. Nothing goes to waste. Between lions and hyenas, almost every large carcass is eventually stripped, crushed, and scattered. Very little biomass is locked away in bones or tough skin. Prey stay moving and healthy. Constant risk from both lions and hyenas forces herbivores to stay alert, move across the landscape, and not overgraze any one spot. The slow, sick, and old animals are taken first. Scavengers and decomposers flourish. Foxes, jackals, vultures, eagles, crows, and a whole world of insects benefit from the leftovers and bone fragments that lions and hyenas leave behind. In a sense, lions and spotted hyenas together act like the heartbeat of a Pleistocene-style ecosystem. Every kill is a pulse of energy that ripples outward through dozens of species. So when we imagine Asiatic lions back in the Caucasus and Central Asia, we're not just imagining one big cat standing alone in a silent landscape. We're imagining small wildcats slipping between rocks, lynx and leopards owning forests and cliffs above lion country, snow leopards and maybe tigers ruling the extreme edges of cold and wet, cheetahs streaking across open flats, striped hyenas ghosting in after dark, spotted hyenas in some future scenario, rebuilding the ancient rivalry of lion and hyena. A full predator guild, a complete conversation between speed, stealth, power, and patience. And right in the center of that conversation, once again, the Asiatic lion. So if we put all of this together, the deer and boar, the saiga and gazelles, the wild horses and bison, the wolves, leopards, bears, cheetahs, and hyenas, a picture starts to appear. It's not a zoo. It's not a fantasy Africa in the wrong place. It's a restored Eurasia, a Caucasus where red deer move carefully through forests because something powerful might be watching. A Central Asian steppe where saiga herds bunch and flow across the grass because there's more out there than just the wind and the wolves. Valleys where foxes, jackals, lynx, leopards and striped hyenas orbit around a force they haven't known for centuries, but still somehow remember in their bones. And right at the center of that web, doing what they did long before we carved them into stone and turned them into symbols, Asiatic lions simply living their lives, sleeping in the shade, playing as cubs, arguing over carcasses, breeding, hunting, patrolling, roaring. For thousands of years, people in this part of the world painted lions on walls, stamped them onto coins, carved them onto gates and crowns. We made them guardians of cities, companions of gods, tests of kings. We loved the image of the lion so much that we forgot the animal itself was disappearing. Rewilding Asiatic lions into the Caucasus and Central Asia is a chance to close that gap, to bring the symbol and the reality back together, to let the landscapes that created those myths have their lions again. To show that conservation isn't only about holding on to the last fragments, it can also be about bringing back what we've lost. Of course, none of this is simple. It means long-term planning, talking honestly with local communities, protecting livestock, paying real compensation when losses happen, building corridors, and putting science and ethics ahead of politics and ego. It means accepting that wildness is messy, that sometimes lions will do what lions do, and we have to decide together how much true wildness we're willing to live with. But it also means new stories. Stories of rangers tracking lion prides in valleys that haven't heard a roar in 1,000 years. Stories of local kids who grow up knowing that lions are not just far away in Africa or locked behind bars, but part of their home region again. Stories of forests growing back stronger, of rivers running clearer, of birds and small mammals returning to places that were silent. In the end, the question isn't just, can we bring Asiatic lions back? The real question is, what kind of future do we want for the Caucasus and Central Asia? A future where these landscapes stay quiet, tamed and half-finished, missing the animal that once sat at the top of the web? Or a future where we choose to restore the full chorus, prey and predators, scavengers and giants, forests and rivers and grasslands, and where, somewhere out there on a warm evening, if you listen carefully, you can hear a sound that hasn't been heard here for far too long. A lion's roar rolling across the valleys and the steppe, reminding us that wild Eurasia is not just our past, it can still be our future. If you enjoyed this journey into the wild history of Eurasia, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me in the next episode of Rewilding the Future, where we continue exploring how to bring life back to the land. Thank you for watching, and remember, nature always returns, if we let it.